with my template, I went ahead and made a black line that allowed me to put my jig blocks in place. And what I did, I followed the line, and then at the ends, I'm going to bring them in just a tiny bit with some extra blocks, just so I have a little bit of a percentage of too much curve, because there'll be some spring back more than likely. So it's always good to put in a little extra on the end that you can count on. And like I said, I'm going to be gouging out a lot of the top edge of this lamination to fit under that rail, and then more of the rail shows as it goes farther down the hull side as the flare bears out. So I've got some safety room built in there. I've made the stock, lots of stock, so I can have lots of room to do the fairing process. And then I'll do that one, and then I have another set of rails that I cut from a 2x2 piece that will be a brand new lamination with flat sides. So it won't have as much curve in it, but I believe it'll be just as easy. If you use enough clamps, enough blocks, you can gradually pull that in. And I'll show you when I do the lamination how you need to kind of work your way back and forth on the clamps so that they end up seating correctly against the block. So I'm going to get to that. Went ahead and did a dry fit to make sure that this would work. And I noticed that the lines that were originally in the original layup that I cut out or cut apart is pretty darn close. I think it just had sprung back from not being anywhere close to a boat since it had been made. So now that I know everything works, my blocks are set aside or set apart just enough so the curve can continue. My outside line is where I want the outside of the rail to be. This lip is going to be just below the covering board, and then I'll fair it in, make it smooth, and take the proudness out of it. This inside face will get a lot of gouging out with my sander to fit the contour of the boat. And we know the length is correct. I got it just beyond where the rail starts to straighten out, and I can finish up with another piece of rail to continue that. It does not have to be bent. So now I'm going to go ahead and release this and go ahead with the lamination process. So now I'm ready to do my lamination. So this one is ready to go. New gloves. Hoping to try to keep this as neat as possible because I don't really want to get it on my clamps. I'm going to put plastic between this joint, or I should say the block, and I'm going to find those original areas where this was laminated so I can get a pretty good fit. Get these arranged correctly. There we go. That's a lot better. So they're sticking pretty good already, which is a great sign. Piece of plastic there. There. Found my original joint, if you want to call it the way it was done when I found it. That way those surfaces are pretty good. So I've got that down. I'm going to change my gloves and go ahead and put on the clamps. Really like the fact that the glue is doing a lot of work already. You'll notice like there's one missing here. That has not much to do with it. These are well over the length I need. So I'm going to have a lot of stuff on the outside that's going to get cut off. So now I'm just going to put my clamps on. I'm going to start with the middle. So here's the clamp part I don't want to get on my, I think I'll start with one of my longer ones until I get that where I want it. And then I can do some adjusting if I have to for my length. But I think I'm pretty good. When you start doing this, it's going to, you'll notice it's going to start, oh, got to get my block in the right place. I've got these blocks a little loose on here so that they have the ability to flex and move. There we go. So there's my first bend. Got my plastic down in there. Last thing I want to have to do is get these off the blocks and possibly ruin what I've already done. So there's your major arc. That's been established. This is my tail end. Make sure I keep my plastic down in there. The ends are going to be the part where the tension is because it wants to try to stay straight. All right, there's my gutter. And I will go ahead and just start to clamp these all up. Here's my major bend. It's in there. The rest of them I'm just going to start now tightening up to continue with the laminate. Get my squeeze out. And I might not even really worry about the squeeze out very much because I'm going to really want to leave these clamps where they are. And I'm not going to be able to really get all of the goo. But I'll do my best. I'm not going to be clamping these a lot because I do want some glue in there. I want the glue to stay in there. Just so I get squeeze out and I know that I've got the job taken care of. There we go. And I'll even give this maybe a wrap with the hammer just to make sure everything stays down there where I want it. Sometimes they'll move up. If I wrap it with a hammer, it won't alter this too much. All right. Put a long one in here. And get my clamp to cooperate. There we go. And I'll put this one on the end. If I don't, I'll end up running into it. There. All the clamps are on. The clamps are protected by the plastic. I've got great squeeze out. I'm going to put one right here and call this one done. Leave the plastic off the clamp hits that block for good grip. Then I'm just going to walk around, make sure everybody's got a little tension. They do. I'm going to do some cleanup, give it a hammer wrap, and let it go. Got the rub rail piece on now. I backed out the bevel of the hull against the bevel of this new laminate rub rail so that it's smooth along the inside. So when I put the 5200 on, it'll have a nice seal underneath. This gap here, which I might do a little bit of work on the bottom of this covering board to make that more fair, but overall it'll go in tighter when I fair it on the outside, and then the 5200 will be in there, and then a piece of aluminum trim goes over the top of that. So there's a little bit of work, maybe here, but most likely here, to make that a really nice joint. You have to leave a little bit of room in there for glue, the 5200. These are going to now get fasteners that will have a little upward direction. There's a batten back here, or I should say a clamp. It's the covering board clamp that, there's a clamp on the inside of the hull that the screws will fasten into. So I'm going to go ahead and get those in, and then I'll start the fairing process on the outside now that I know that my inside is fine. Now that I've got the rub rail, as you saw me, I planed it, and I would periodically stop, and I would go back and I would remove the fasteners and then make the countersinks even deeper. Because as you took off stock, you have to keep moving the screws in. So then I finished up with my favorite little belt sander, the Armadillo, with 40 grit for sculpting. And now I'm gonna go ahead and move down to this last piece, which is about 6 feet. And then I have a 30-degree angle here. So should always, think of the wind and the water coming this way, always have the overlap on the outside. So a 90-degree or a 30-degree joint. So here's my 1-inch stock, just the right piece, so I don't throw anything away. And like I said, I'm trying to follow the grain as much as I can. So I'll flip that over, and I'll buzz off this piece, and I'll have, looking for some knots, which is rare in mahogany, but I see there's one right here. I'll get that cut out, and I'll even chase that up as far as I can just to try to save some. I'm going to have to make rub rail anyway, so I'll go ahead and cut this out, make my pattern onto my stock, and I'll just cut that out and see how she fits. Now that I've got my wood cut out, I need to take the bevel. And I'm going to take the bevel in several places from this remnant because sometimes they're not exact. So I go down here. This is a pretty dramatic one. Then I go farther down, and it's more dramatic down there. So what I'm going to do is I'll start out here because I'll have lots of stock. And then as I get closer and farther up to the bow of the boat, it gets more. I think it's because you got less material to cover, the more dramatic the bevel for that smooth look. So I'm going to start the bevel out on this end and take this measurement and go ahead and just get an initial bevel at that measurement, and then I'll go ahead and work the other one slowly into it. Thankfully, when I get farther up that rail onto the covering board, the rub rail, the covering board has a lot more original wood, so it'll be easier to get it matched. At this point, I'm glad I have this because I would be flying blind, but I guess you just figure it out. So I'm going to start beveling that with my sander. Well, I've added here, I'll show it to you how it looks. This is the profile that goes under the covering board. This is the rub rail. Covering board will overlap that. This is probably longer than it needs to be, but I believe the original piece, which is here, might have been almost too short. I would rather have it be tucked up against that new rub rail or covering board piece I'm going to make, so I have a nice tight fit. They had glue on it, it appears, but there's also a lot of rot. So a lot of water and stuff got in there, and it could have been a tighter joint and sealed. It would have probably been better. And then I added the bevel on the bottom, kind of rounded it over to match this profile. And it's tight against the boat. This had a small twist in it. I chose to back out the curve itself instead of a twist. I backed it out with a sander. And now I have a flat surface against the boat, again, to prevent rot, which I noticed on the bottom. So it'll be a flat piece. Looks good, but is really flat on the boat and tight. So I like that. I did all that with this handy little sander. I was able to get one of these on Facebook Marketplace. It's the Porter cable. The model number, can't find off. Oh, here we go. Looks like, no, that's not it. So this is the style, and if you can get this, you'll love it because the vacuum, I use my Craftsman vacuum or shop vac, works really great. Very little dust, and it's handheld, so you can get your hand down there both for pressing and picking up, and I love. And you also obviously have this option to do more pressive, and I just put 40 and 60 grit on there, and I did my sculpting with that, and then I'll follow up with 80 grit to give it the surface I want when I get the other covering board made, and I can make my fit pretty tight. So I'm going to take it over to the boat now, and I'll show you how it fits. I have my rub rails on both sides of the boat, and because so much of the covering board and rub rail especially were rotted or gone, or the edges were gone, I've never really been sure how far down the side they went other than some shadows. And I'm thinking, I'm following the shadow now. What I now will do is I put it on, and I wasn't satisfied with the sweep. I think this builder was trying to simulate the late 50s cars that had like a two-tone, teal and white with some chrome to accent the white fin, even though there weren't fins anymore. It was a detail on the side of the rear of the car. I think that person was trying to do this. So in that spirit, I'm going to try to give my rub rail, the bottom part, a little more curve. As you can see, it looks a little bit too chunky right here, or it's coming up and it just, I don't know, it doesn't look good. So what I'm going to do is I have a batten that it's thick enough to give me a line to draw. It's stiff enough to give you a sweep, but not too stiff. I've got pre-drilled holes, and I put in little finish nails. I tap them in just in trying to figure out where the sweep is. And then I can adjust it up and down. Like here, I can go up and down. If I don't like the sweep, I'll go ahead and adjust it. And I can do this until it looks good from the bat. You know, I'll step way back and look at it, and I'll see if I like it. So, and then I go all the way up here, and here's my 1-inch rub rail, and I stubbed a piece on here. I didn't want to waste a huge piece of mahogany stock, so I stubbed on a piece here, and obviously this has to come out. So I'll mark all of this, including this, which is 1.25 inches on this rub rail up here. I'm going to obviously cut that down, and then I'll do my rounding and shaping both here and on the bottom of that rub rail to round over that bottom edge. So not only it'll take paint, but it'll flow better into the hull. So everything is on. I've got everything beveled. Now I'm doing the final drawing out of my rough stock dry fits just to make sure I can get it to where I the way it looks, and then I'll go ahead and do a final sand, and we'll be done with the rub rails. Well, that's the starboard side. I've already finished the port. So that'll be the end of the creation of the rub rail. And then I will, of course, fine tune it as I get the 5200 on both the covering boards and the rub rails next time. Put 5200 in for the joint, and then go ahead and put in silicone bronze screws. I've been using construction screws because they're harder and they're easier to take in and out over and over and over again, which I've been doing. So I'll be putting in the good screws and the good glue, and I will then go ahead and ferret this out smooth. A couple places where I changed my mind on where I wanted the holes. So I put epoxy in, which is fine. And so that'll be it for this episode. I'll see you in 2 weeks where I'll put the everything back on permanently, and then we can move on to the bottom of the boat for fairing and then painting, and moving on to the black, to the sides, and covering these in black paint. So thank you for tuning in, and as always, if you're not a subscriber, I encourage you to do so you get the Wednesday morning notifications that the videos are out. That's the goal, to be on a 2-week schedule from here on out till next summer, I guess. And if you're enjoying it to the point where you like it, please hit the like button. It's always nice to receive positive feedback. And of course, always put your questions below. Try to keep them positive, but if there's questions you have about what I'm doing, or why didn't I do something else, please go ahead and ask. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in 2 weeks.